A big thank you to my patrons for supporting this channel. You guys rock. If you like this video, please consider clicking the like button or subscribing. It really helps the channel out and I really appreciate it. Thank you. Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I am your innkeeper and today we'll be discussing the subclasses in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Specifically, we'll be talking about the rogue subclasses. And before we get started, just a quick note that this video is not an in-depth review of each subclass. This is just my first impressions on each one of these based on what I've read in the book. Once I see them played on the table or I play them myself, then my actual opinions might change, but as of right now, this is what I think of them. So the first subclass we're going to be discussing today is called the Phantom. So at third level, you get the Whispers of the Grave feature. When you finish a rest, you get proficiency in one skill or tool that you aren't currently proficient in. This could be pretty good. The thing is that you can't gain the same proficiency 2 rests in a row. So if you wanted to be proficient in, say, smith's tools and work on building something for several days, you can only do it for one day, and the next day you have to pick a different thing, so you won't be able to do something like that. The ability explicitly says that you have to pick a different skill or tool, so that limits this ability quite a bit. Not just that, but you have to kind of anticipate what skill you're going to need for the day, which is not always the easiest thing to do. You don't necessarily always know what you're going to be doing. If you know you're going to go out and investigate a crime scene, then at least you know to go into the day knowing the investigation skill. That's a very rare circumstance when you're going to actually be able to plan ahead like that. So the ability is kind of limited. At third level, you also gain the Wails from the Grave feature. So you get to use this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and it recovers after a long rest. So the way it works is that after you deal sneak attack damage to a creature, you can roll half your sneak attack dice and deal that much damage to another creature within 30 feet. So this one is really good. You don't have to roll to hit the second creature, which is freaking fantastic. And this damage scales very well because it scales with your sneak attack damage. So I'm seeing quite a few of like the Tasha subclasses that have abilities that deal free damage to creatures without having to attack or without allowing for a saving throw. And this is one of those subclasses, and it's really strong. So power creep is something that is thrown around quite a bit, especially lately as new books are coming out. And I think that when you add ranged damage that doesn't require any rolls to protect the creature from it, or any rolls for you to attack and deal the damage, then that definitely falls into this power creep category. Those abilities are really, really strong. If you have a 100% chance to hit a creature and deal damage to it, that is always going to be better, always, than having to roll to hit or making it do a saving throw. So let's say you're having to roll a d8 without needing to roll to hit or it rolling a saving throw. It's going to be better damage most of the time than rolling a d12 for damage and having to roll to attack or having it save. So that's something to think about because you're hitting 100% of the time. As a player though, hey, this ability is pretty fantastic because it's so powerful. So hey, at 9th level, you get an ability called Tokens of the Departed. When a creature dies within 30 feet of you, you can use your reaction and get a trinket that gives you like special bonuses. So these are some of the things that you do. You have advantage on death saving throws and constitution saving throws. When you deal sneak attack damage, you can destroy the trinket and use the Wails from the Grave without using up one of your daily uses for it. Or you can destroy the trinket and ask the creature that died when you made it one question. It's kind of like Speak with the Dead, that spell. All the trinket abilities are useful in one way or another, and they provide some interesting buffs and utility. The ability is pretty cool. I like that the designers are thinking outside of the box here. They all provide some great mechanical benefits to back up the thematic benefits as well. At 13th level, you get the Ghost Walk feature. So once per long rest, as a bonus action, you can activate a few benefits for 10 minutes. So you can fly at a hover speed of 10 feet and attacks have disadvantage against you. You can also move through solid objects and creatures. Really, really good. You can activate this again if you choose to break the trinket from your 9th level ability. So another way to get an additional use of it if you specifically need it. If you guys have watched my videos before, you know that I love abilities that give you the choice to be able to use it again, but at a high cost, because it provides some options for you to think about, and I really enjoy that. The fly speed is not very much, but it's fly speed with hover and no concentration requirement, which is always fantastic. And then the fact that you can move through things is pretty huge. There's very few things in this game, even gaseous form, the spell, that really give you the ability to just move through something solid. This ability becomes top tier just because of that. It's unique to anything else in the game, really. The utility functions are huge on their own, but then you also get to impose disadvantage on attacks against you. So, I mean, it's so good, so good. And then your capstone is called Death's Friend, and you get it at 17th level. This one has a couple of benefits. So when you use your Whales from the Grave, you can deal the necrotic damage to both the first and the second creature. And then at the end of a long rest, you automatically get a soul trinket if you don't already have one. So a decent boost to damage, and getting a free soul trinket is nice. It's not the strongest capstone, but you know how I feel about high level abilities. You're probably never going to see them because you're probably not going to play to such a level. So take a drink. So overall, this subclass is pretty good. Very solid, very different from most other rogues. I love undead stuff and ghosts and things like that, so I'm kind of a sucker for it, but this one's actually backed up by mechanics. It has some really interesting mechanics, some really powerful ones, the ability to deal extra damage to a creature without having to roll to hit, and the ability to fly. Just those two alone make this subclass a great choice. All right, the next archetype that we're going to be talking about today is called the Soul Knife. So at 3rd level, you get psionic power. You get psionic energy dice, which are a resource that fuel your abilities, kind of like the Battle Master and their dice. You get more of these whenever your proficiency bonus increases. And then once per short rest, you regain a die, and then the rest of them recover after a long rest. That I don't really care for. There's a few subclasses in Tasha's that do this, where like you can regain one use of this limited resource ability on a short rest, but you regain all the rest of them after a long rest. It's a little more complex and confusing, so don't necessarily care for the added complexity, but whatever. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's just a minor kind of irk. So something to note here, it's one of the few rogue subclasses that have a kind of limited resource like this. And I'm not talking about like once per day use abilities. I mean like a resource that you get to pick, and you have a certain amount that run out throughout the day. So other than like Arcane Trickster that has spell slots, but that's a little bit different, generally rogues have abilities that aren't limited in uses. I mean, that's kind of what the rogue is known for. You can go, encounter after encounter after encounter without having to take any rest. As long as you're not damaged or need healing, your efficiency stays the same from the first encounter to the 20th encounter in the day as a rogue generally. This one's a little bit different. So if you pick this subclass, expect to change your playstyle a little bit. And actually, it's going to be even more so as we get to the later abilities. But something to think about, if you're a rogue player and that's all you play, expect this subclass to kind of throw you off a little bit in how your playstyle is going to be handled throughout the game. So one thing to note about these abilities is that they're all available to you. Unlike some of the other Tasha subclasses in the book that you have to select some that you learn from a list, you know them all. And you just get a certain number of die and you can pick which one you're going to use your die for throughout the day. So let's take a look at them. Psi Bolstered Knack. So you can add your psionic die to a skill roll that you failed, but only if you failed and only if you're proficient with that skill or tool. So this means that you can't use it for like initiative rolls or grapple checks unless your DM allows athletics and you happen to be proficient in terms of grapple checks. Anyway, if you still fail after adding the psionic die, you don't waste your use of it. So that's pretty cool. It's kind of a way to give you a boost to your skill roll without really giving you a boost. You can choose to get a boost, and if you fail, then it doesn't waste the die, so it's pretty cool. Anyways, it's a pretty good ability. I like it that it doesn't get wasted, and it can be useful in a number of circumstances. The next ability that you get is called Psychic Whispers. You can speak telepathically to several creatures for several hours, and you can be up to a mile apart. Holy cow. It doesn't even use a psionic die the first time that you use it, every single long rest. So it's amazingly helpful for all sorts of stuff. The best part is that you and the creature that you communicate with don't even have to be able to speak the same language. So honestly, I think this ability can break certain interactions with NPC encounters, making a language barrier or inability to speak without being spied upon completely insignificant. As a DM, I'd honestly keep an eye on this one and work out alternatives with your group if you find it too disruptive for the game, because I suspect that this one could also be one of those game-breaking ones. At 3rd level, you also get the ability called Psychic Blades. Whenever you attack, you can get the benefit, basically kind of like a Shadow Blade, the spell, with the same properties, including like the range that you can throw it at. It deals less damage than Shadow Blade, but you can make bonus action attacks with your other hand if you aren't holding anything, so that's pretty cool. The bonus action attack with it deals a little bit less damage than the main attack, but it's another chance to deal some damage if you haven't used your bonus action yet. But this is one thing that I think I should say. As a rogue, you already have a few options for your bonus action, so don't really expect to be using this as often as you think you will, unless you completely change up your playstyle and your tactics. So as a whole, this ability is fine. It's psychic damage, which is great, especially for lower levels, because you're more than likely not going to have a magical weapon, so you can use this instead. But once you get a magical weapon, I think this is probably not going to get used as often. It's definitely one of those abilities that you're going to see used a lot until about level 5 or 6 maybe, and then after that you'll probably never see it used. Or at least that's what you would say if the next ability that you get doesn't improve upon it. So at level 9 you get an ability called Soul Blades, and this one gives you several features. The first one is called Homing Strikes. If you miss with an attack with your Psychic Blades, you can use a psionic die and add it to the attack roll. If you miss with the attack, you don't waste your psionic die. So that's really cool. So this is fantastic. Rogues don't get multi-attacks, so making sure that your one attack hits is crucial, more so than any other class in the game, in order for a rogue to be effective in combat. And as your dice increases in size, this ability makes it very likely that you're going to hit with your attack. And if you're playing things properly, then you'll also likely have advantage on the attack, which means that your chance of missing is going to be really, really low, even at level 9, and regardless of the creature's AC, to be honest. You also get an ability called Psychic Teleportation, so you have a bonus action teleport that uses your Psychic die to determine the distance. This one looks amazing on paper, and out of combat, it's really, really useful, but I do have to note something extremely important about it. It's a bonus action. Of all the classes, the rogue has very little room for bonus action abilities because they're already using their bonus action to hide or disengage, especially if they want to be able to land their sneak attack damage or be consistent dealing sneak attack damage. And then on top of that, at 3rd level, you already got another bonus action ability in your Psychic Blade offhand attack. So these two abilities, not only do they clash with each other, they clash with the rogue standard abilities as they are. So now you've got so many things that you can do with your bonus action that you may not see some of these abilities being used as often as you think that they will be. Clearly, that makes this ability more of a utility ability outside of combat, unless you change up your playstyle. So this is what I was saying earlier. Not only with the 2 blades thing do you probably want to change your playstyle, but now with this thing, you may also be changing your playstyle during combat if you want to be able to teleport in and out while fighting creatures. So basically what that means is that this ability, not only is it a utility function outside of combat only, but inside of combat, more than likely it's going to be a defensive ability more than anything. During a fight, you're probably only going to want to use this if things get hairy, but here's the thing, you already have something to do in most cases. Your bonus action disengage, and that one doesn't use any resources. So what are you going to do? Bonus action disengage and move, or bonus action teleport and use a resource that is a limited resource. You know what I mean? So it's your bonus action teleport is just going to be used pretty much, I think, if all else fails. It's cool in theory, but I think that unfortunately it wasn't executed as well as I think that they expected to. So basically, just to kind of hammer the nail in the coffin with this ability, it makes this a very, very circumstantial ability that you're probably never going to use in combat, except in a handful of times during your entire adventuring career. Pretty much only if your disengage is not enough to keep you safe, and only as a defensive ability. An easy fix to this would have been if they had made this a reaction ability instead of a bonus action ability. Then this would have been a freaking fantastic ability that wasn't overpowered and would have been really cool for a rogue to have. But as it is written in the book, it is a wasted opportunity. Oh well. At 13th level, you get the Psychic Veil ability, so you can become invisible for an hour without needing concentration, but it goes away if you attack or if you force a creature to make a saving throw. So excellent utility, a great way to get away in combat if you're in over your head. It also works really well with concentration spells that don't do damage or force a saving throw. I'm sure that multi-class builds are going to be pretty numerous once people start realizing that about this subclass. So the other cool thing is that you can use it once per long rest, but if you really need to use it again, you can spend a psychic die. So that's really cool. And if you watch my other videos, then you know that I love abilities that give you the kinds of options where you have to make a choice. Use a certain resource to be able to use an ability again that you normally would have only had one use of. So really cool. I like that. Great ability. And at 17th level, you get your capstone, which is called Rend Mind. Once per long rest, this one allows you to stun a creature for a minute, kind of like a monk. It's useful because it allows you to get your sneak attack damage if you hit, since attacks against a stunned creature always have advantage. But for 17th level, this one is a little bit underwhelming. After all, like, monks get basically the exact same ability, only at level 5, and they get more uses per day than the rogue does. And I get why they did this. I mean, they don't want to make the monk useless, which they already are, to me, let's be honest. But, you know, they didn't want to overstep and step on the shoes of the monk, or the bare feet of the monk, I guess. So it is what it is. It's not the worst of the rogue capstones, and you're probably never going to see this ability because, hey, you're probably never going to play till 17th level. Take a drink. This subclass is a really good option for rogues. It's not overly powerful, but it has some really fun features. The biggest thing I notice about this one is that it might play so different from the playstyle of a typical rogue that regular rogue players are going to have to change their playstyle completely if they want to take full advantage of all the abilities within the subclass. So, for example, you have a couple of potentially great bonus action abilities which rogues tend to use for hide and disengage. So you're going to have to either not use those abilities or not use hide and disengage, which you're probably used to using as a rogue all the time. So instead, what you can do is leverage advantage on attacks using different tactics with your group. So talk to your party members, have them somehow help you get advantage on each attack without having to hide or disengage, so you can use a few of these other abilities that you're getting with this subclass. But that's not all, because you also have a new resource to track and manage, which is not common for rogues. It's something that you're also going to have to think about, because rogues can go from 1 combat to 20 combats without a short or long rest, as long as they're not hurt, and still be just as effective as that very first combat. This one is not that way. This one, you have a very limited resource that you're going to have to track and manage, and your effectiveness will drop as each combat goes through. So another thing that you might not be used to playing a rogue. So overall, it does add up. It's not a bad thing at all. It adds up to an interesting rogue subclass. It's just that it may not be for everyone. Final thoughts on the rogues and Tashas. The Phantom is an interesting rogue with some great utility abilities, very outside the box, and it sets this subclass apart from other rogues. It has some interesting themes, and for me, it doesn't cross the line of being like too cheesy or too comic book like some of the other subclasses in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. In fact, it has more of a creepy theme and creepy vibe that fits really well in the fantasy setting. Mechanically, it's good. It doesn't break the game in any way, and it gives some fantastic new options for rogue players to make use of. The Soul Knife is also a rogue that feels really different and unique compared to other rogue subclasses, but in a different way. It introduces a limited resource that powers a lot of its abilities, and it's something that rogues usually don't have to deal with, other than the Arcane Trickster with their spell slots. So this alone makes this subclass extremely unique for a class that normally can go encounter without needing to refresh their resources. The Arcane Trickster uses spells, so it's not really a good comparison to this subclass. The Soul Knife is really unique amongst its peers, not only in theme, but also in mechanics. But like the Arcane Trickster, the Soul Knife requires a different playstyle of resource management that most other rogues don't ever have to really worry about. It's not a bad thing, and it gives you more options in and out of combat, and it opens a range of utility options that make it really versatile for a lot of different types of campaigns. But it also adds a lot of bonus action abilities for use within combat, and that throws a wrench in your typical roguish tactics, which require a huge change in your playstyle there when you move from level 2 to level 3. The only subclass that I can think of that has such a drastic change in playstyle from level 2 to level 3, other than this one, is the Battlesmith Artificer. I guess the Artillerist kind of is a little bit that way too, but this one and the Battlesmith are a huge change in playstyle from level 2 to level 3. And then also the Psychic Whispers ability might be a little bit too powerful, but I'll wait to see it in action just to make a final decision on whether I think it is overpowered or not. So for now, we'll just say it's a very powerful ability. We're not going to mark it broken just yet. One ability, the teleportation one, stands out as a bit of a miss, unfortunately. But even so, I think the Soul Knife is still a top tier rogue subclass. The only caveat being that you have to play far more tactically in order to make it work and be able to make the most out of each ability. It's definitely not a subclass that can run on autopilot, if you know what I mean. Which means that this one can be a lot of fun to play if you're into the playstyle of constantly having to analyze the battlefield and coming up with new and unique tactics. Not only that, but thematically, this one is a really big win too. Unlike the Psy Warrior Fighter, which is also in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, this subclass fits in well within the fantasy setting, at least in my opinion, which I just can't visualize for the Psy Warrior Fighter. Anyways, let's go ahead and go over my rankings. Quick note on my rankings, as I say in every video. When I rank a subclass, it's compared to the other subclasses within its own same class. I don't rank them based against other subclasses. So I'm not ranking the rogue subclasses here versus wizard subclasses. When I say it's bottom tier compared to other rogues, or top tier compared to other rogues. So there you go. All right, so what do we have for the subclasses in Tasha's for the rogue? In bottom tier, we have none. For mid tier, we also have none. And then the top tier, we have both the Phantom and the Soul Knife. So both really, really good subclasses for the rogue in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So far, the subclasses in Tasha's have been a very mixed bag, but I can't wait till we finish out the list so I can kind of go over a summary of all the subclasses, which ones I think were the best and which ones were big misses, which is going to be a video I will be putting out once I'm done ranking all the subclasses within the book. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please be sure to leave them down there in the comments below. And if you like this video, please leave a like or consider subscribing to the channel. I hope this video was helpful for you, and I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I am your Innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then. The only other subclass that I can think of that changes so drastically from level 2 to level 3 in terms of playstyle is the Battlesmith Artificer. I guess the canon one, I hope this video was helpful for you. 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 Check in anytime.